Welcome to our Knowledge 20 Customer Journey series. You'll hear firsthand stories from organizations that are turning to KPMG Powered Enterprise and ServiceNow to get work done in new ways and apply lessons learned to drive toward the future of work. With a variety of global and local regulations governing data privacy, how can you manage compliance efficiently with vendors that have your data? Join KPMG and Comcast to learn about the innovation behind the deployment of ServiceNow governance, risk, and compliance in vendor risk management, leveraging BitSight for vendor security and privacy insights.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sagat Sindhu. I'm a director in KPMG's advisory practice based out of DC. I work with my clients primarily focusing on cyber strategy and digital transformation. Having said that, I thank you all for joining us today for a discussion with Sudhanshu Kairar, my client partner. He's a vice president of governance, risk, and compliance at Comcast. We have been working closely together since late 2018, and we are pleased he could join us today to help tell the story about the transformation of their GRC and vendor risk functions using ServiceNow and KPMG Powered Enterprise. So without further ado, Sudhanshu, do you want to start telling us about your role at Comcast?
Sure. Thanks, Sagat. Yeah, so Sagat mentioned we've been working closely with KPMG for quite a while now, since late 2018. As you mentioned, I'm the VP of Cybersecurity, Governance, Risk, and Compliance at Comcast Cable. So I'm part of the broader cybersecurity team, and I lead the GRC functions with some of my main functions. Some of the main things that I own are the security policy program, third-party security assurance, security training and awareness, our compliance programs, really all the things that we're going to talk about today in the context of ServiceNow. My background prior to this role, though, I started at Comcast almost 5 years ago, and I spent my first couple of years as the head of technology audit as part of internal audit. And then prior to that, been with several different companies and other compliance and audit related roles.
Thanks for that, Sudhanshu. So when we started our discussions with you early in 2019 and late 2018, Comcast was working on becoming compliant with the new California Consumer Privacy Act, which we call CCPA, which brought a lot of focus to vendors in your environment that manage Comcast's customers' personal data on behalf of Comcast. So my next question to you is twofold, essentially. Given your capabilities at the time, can you describe that challenge of dealing with CCPA and the significance of it? And then also, what had you done about it up to that point?
Yeah, sure, Sagat. So as you mentioned, the CCPA was very impactful to our third-party security program, just given the number of vendors that we have. We work with probably thousands of vendors in our environment. We're very dependent on them, and they also handle quite a bit of our data. So this was a great opportunity. CCP actually was, while it's had its challenges, it was also a great opportunity for us in the sense that it helped us set the stage, not just for the California regulations, but also set us up for what the regulations that were going to be coming from other states. So as we really dug into the program, it was an amazing number of vendors that we had that transact our PI data, that actually store our PI data. We not only needed to talk to different vendors that transact our data, but really we need to specifically determine which ones stored our data. So the legacy tools we had, they weren't adequate. So that was at that point that we started initiating the enhanced implementation of ServiceNow, and really we saw that it was as we went through the process, and I know we're going to talk some more about it, but it really proved to be a scalable and really industry caliber solution for us that not only supported our needs today when it comes to CCPA as the law is already in place, but it also, we feel like it's really going to support us nicely in the future.
So just tagging along, right? How has the updated ServiceNow implementation made a difference, say from a then and now perspective?
When we first started out our ServiceNow journey, we had a small piece that we used to manage our third-party security. It was to me, it was a really kind of a basic implementation. It wasn't going to be something that would set us up for the future. First and foremost, I think we looked at a couple of vendors and we hired KPMG to to really gather requirements. It was a GRC strategy engagement that we had. It was a great, it felt it to me. It was a great decision, and it's really been validated now with our implementation and supporting our overall GRC objectives. When I think about our journey, we really, since the last year, we've laid the foundation for really sound policy, compliance, risk, issues management, which is really the kind of the foundational pieces of a GRC function. So when I think of that, once we had that in place, really it gave us the opportunity to look at the bigger problems like CCPA and third-party risk management, and really consolidated some point solutions to come up with a kind of a single solution that would align to our business objectives. So if I dig into third party a little bit, we've had a huge amount of success with third party security, and I think in my mind we moved the needle substantially in terms of not just identifying vendors, but also gaining a deeper understanding of how we work with them. And in that process, to manage our obligation with CCPA, we've managed to build some really great workflow within ServiceNow to facilitate this TPSA process and how we handle our requests from customers. I will tell you from our analyst perspective, the process that was built is really easy to use, and really from our analyst perspective, it's sort of seamless. It happens behind the scenes, which is really great. So overall, I think we're really very well positioned for the future in terms of our scalability and the work that we're doing with ServiceNow.
So following up on the last question, Sudhanshu, it sounds like you were able to significantly modernize and transform Comcast's GRC and vendor management capabilities with a big step forward in automation and other IT capabilities. What was the special innovation in all of that? Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, I think for one thing, I mean, when I talk to some of my peers, I haven't really seen the GRC implementation be as extensive as we've done here at Comcast. When I really looked at our vendor risk capability early on, it didn't really check all the boxes. There wasn't a specific module that could do exactly what we needed. So I think the innovation associated with that was great. We were able to really customize it to what we needed to do. And also, we didn't want to have too many tools in our ecosystem to solve our problems. So to that end, it was a real value-added element that we had. We were able to use what we saw was that the platform was very versatile, and KPMG really offers a lot of guidance, throughout the process to build really a complete solution with, when I think about automated workflows and really a good tight integration of all of our GRC processes, specifically in the vendor risk area. So we can really centralize everything in a single tool or minimize the number of tools.
That's good, Sudhanshu. So as a follow-up question to that, something you touched on before, scalability. Is there an example that you can talk of that demonstrates it in context of the solution?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did was we integrated BitSight as part of our ServiceNow implementation. So for those who don't know, BitSight's it's a security rating tool for vendors. It provides us another measure of how our vendors are from a security perspective, and we use it to enhance our vendor risk process. So during our strategy sessions with KPMG, we carved out use cases where its capabilities will really enrich our existing processes and complement what ServiceNow is already doing from an automation and reporting perspective. So what this did for us was it gave us a way to do some risk profiling of our vendors, and then really helped us really kind of tier the vendors and identify which ones were the critical ones when it came to risk, and also when it came to CCPA compliance, and helped us achieve our organizational goals. When you look at it, that deployment, it helped us not just support our team, but helped us support our privacy teams, other stakeholders, and really give us a very nice tool to really monitor our vendors from a vendor risk perspective. So, and it was all in one place, so we weren't swiveling between two different systems either, which really made it a really nice interface and very easy to work with.
Hey, Sudhanshu, so I'm just going to touch on something we talked about and in this conversation around BitSight. If you want to talk about how BitSight ties into the overall GRC program. I think that'll be helpful.
So imagine when I'm looking at a vendor, I can see not just the questions I've asked, but I can also see with BitSight, I get a score, sort of like a credit score, but a security risk score for a vendor. But then I also get grades for different risk vectors. So I'll get a grade on malware. I'll get a grade on botnets. I'll get a grade on all kinds of other really interesting vectors that BitSight can see from an external perspective. So what that does for me is two things. One is that it gives me kind of this view of what can someone see from the outside, and that's sort of an indicator of what's happening even on the inside of that environment, which helps me assess the vendor, number one. So that's really helpful. And secondly, it makes the assessment process much more meaningful, because what it does is, in some cases, we don't, if there's something that's really covered by BitSight and has a good grade, we may not stress on it as much, but there's other areas that are where the grade isn't very good, and it's something that really that's concerning based on the service that they're providing to us. We'll drill down a little bit deeper with the vendor and ask more questions. And what that'll result in, it's actually some really good illuminating conversation, because in some cases, it results in an issue or a finding that we will then ask them to go and remediate. And also, it just makes for a much more meaningful conversation with the vendor. The other thing at a more sort of macro level it does for us is we can start looking at vendors by classes. So if I want to look at all of our call center vendors, or if I want to look at all of our vendors that provide hosting services, what I can start doing is taking those vendors and start looking at our security scores, our BitSight scores, and start to do kind of a compare and contrast. And that helps us with speaking to our internal stakeholders that are really using these vendors, and it gives them a way to kind of differentiate and see which ones are better to work with. And also, it's something that can be used during purchasing and procurement-related conversations.
So one thing you mentioned, Sudhanshu, was your internal stakeholders, right? So just pressing on that a little bit more, what I'm getting from you is reporting. A lot of KRIs and KPIs that come out of this integrated solution that you have. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we didn't really talk about it before, but one of the things that we've done with this whole implementation is we built out a number of dashboards that are, some of which are operational, some of which are like what you just mentioned before, that show our key risk indicators and key performance indicators. So we've got some really nice dashboards because we have all the data within the ServiceNow database. So we have been using that to communicate with different levels of stakeholders, for everything from operational to risk, working with our security, our other folks in security, with procurement. And even in one case with one group that deals with a specific class of vendors, we've been able to provide them data coming out of BitSight and our vendor risk assessments that they then use as part of their quarterly business reviews with a lot of these vendors. So it's really, so what it does is it's actually bringing security more to the forefront of these conversations with the vendors, aside from the normal sort of operational service level kind of stuff that's already there. So it's bringing really to the forefront, and it's bringing a lot more visibility to the importance of security.
Thanks, Sudhanshu. And I'll just add here for the viewers who are viewing this session, we actually recorded a specific session just on the integration that we did with BitSight and ServiceNow. So that'll be on the content library as well, if you want to go ahead and look that up. Sudhanshu, given that you and your entire team went through this transformation process for almost an year and a half, what was the whole experience like for you and your team? What were some of the key lessons learned during the process, if you could expand on a few of those? So
I think the key lesson for me was that we really followed a very systematic process. So, which started really with when we worked in the beginning of, this journey by setting a strategy and keeping this agile implementation model in place. So we set a strategy and we built user stories. We involved all the right stakeholders. And that was really important, I think, because we were able to build something that was really meaningful to us and that really worked for us and allowed us to scale our in-house solution. So that vision and strategy really made a lot of sense. And it also helped us secure the resources that we needed from a funding perspective, from a people perspective to get the work done, because that strategy really laid out what we needed to do. The other thing was, because we involved all these folks, we got good adoption. Because any implementation that you do with these tools, it's only as good as the adoption that you have with key stakeholders. So we brought our in-house team along with the journey so they could help kind of support it once we did get this operational. And then finally, I think it really matters who you partner with. I have to say we had a great partnership with KPMG throughout the journey. They helped us sort of not just figure out what help us with developing the strategy, but they really came up with a lot of good ideas and told us about things that the capabilities that the ServiceNow has that we were able to leverage, and in some instances, really how we can do things better. One of the things that one of my kind of guiding principles right out of the gate was that we wanted to use as much out of the box functionality as we can, and really mold our process to what ServiceNow already did. And that's where there was a lot of really great input from the KPMG team and from their functional analysts or developers that really helped us in this implementation. The other thing was, I guess, when we think about the implementation of the product, it wasn't just the product, but it was also the the processes and how we work with our vendors and internal customers that they helped to influence. So I think the major lesson was really that I think you really do this very systematically, and having the right partner there to help you through the journey is just critical. Because we didn't have all the answers we really needed. We were able to leverage all the experience that KPMG had with all their other customers or knowledge of the product.
Got to remember to configure and not customize, right, Sudhanshu? I think we heard that
exactly. Yeah,
200 times in the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, that was I got to tell you that was really important for us, because it helps with upgrades, and it really just helps with being able to support it, to not have minimal numbers of customization. So that worked out really well for us. So God, let me from my perspective, maybe I'll flip it around for a minute and get some perspective from your side. What did you learn in terms of, you've been on our journey for a while now? What worked and what didn't work for you?
So before I answer that, Sudhanshu, I want to say thank you for the partnership that you, your team, and Comcast have provided us with. It has been terrific as we have navigated jointly through this journey. For me, one of the biggest learning experiences with my team has been that of the importance of having a strong tone at the top when it comes to any sort of GRC or vendor risk engagements, because it's one of those functions where it's a second line of defense, and there's the internal audit team, there's the first line of defense team, and then you have your business stakeholders. So there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen. So Comcast really did treat this as a transformation journey, and that helped our team immensely when it came to execution, which was ultimately successful. And as an example, which I just mentioned before, it is not often that you find a variety of stakeholders aligning to a common objective. But I think credit here goes to your leadership too, and making sure that a great deal of focus was provided to the group. And that is one of the reasons why it was successful and why we are here, right? And one of the key learning themes for us was of core development. You had an internal team, as you mentioned a little while back, working on several initiatives for you prior to us getting engaged. And making sure that we worked as a closed unit was a challenge at first, because we were the outsiders coming into the company, and there was this feeling that, are we trying to take away what the team was doing or any of that? But with the unflinching support that we got from all the stakeholders and the common goal really to achieve the objectives that we set forth in early 2019 with our strategy, it all came together in the end and was finally recognized with, emails of support and adulation during each of the releases. which I think our team greatly appreciated. So I definitely thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think I think the feeling is mutual. I think we had a lot of support from the KPMG team as well. One more question though. So you guys work with a lot of different organizations. What are some of the interesting trends and insights you're seeing when it comes to privacy and cybersecurity?
If you had asked me this question 6 months ago, I probably would have given you a slightly different answer. But given the current times that we are in, I think the ability to work remotely and how much your processes are automated so they can support, the resiliency of the business is paramount. And, keeping that in mind, I think Comcast goals are no different. As we worked through the last year, I think a lot of focus was on automation, scalability, and ultimately being a resilient function. So with that said, Sudhanshu, before we wrap up, I do want to thank you again for taking the time today. And if there are any, last few key takeaways that you may have for the viewers, please do elaborate on that.
Yeah, thanks, Sagat, and I appreciate I do really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this. I guess there's really two real takeaways that I would give you, and really it's more specific to ServiceNow and the work that we did and the third-party risk side. One was that really I can't, I talked about this before, I can't really overstress the importance of going through a really thoughtful and rigorous process and have key stakeholders involved. It's just so critical that you set the strategy, know what you're doing, and have that goal in hand, kind of that goal in mind. And that really drove the implementation of our work with ServiceNow. So again, I think that was so critical for our success so far. And the other thing is a little bit more specific, but it was really, I think, the integration that we were able to do with BitSight. We've had enormous benefit there. When you think of, in our world, the numbers of vendors that we work with and having the ability to have this other way to look at risk and be really tightly integrated with our vendor risk solution, it's really enhanced our work considerably, and it's really given us this really meaningful way to have a vendor risk monitoring process as one component. So again, I think that's as a takeaway. I think that would be something that's really worth looking into for folks that have BitSight. Just
in closing, right? Like, as you said, setting that tone up top and having everyone's buy-in is very, very important. And, from a KPMG perspective, we look forward to, continuing to work with you and your team and enhancing all the solutions that we have this year and the next year.
Thank you for joining us. We look forward to bringing you additional insights, lessons learned, and much more as we continue the ServiceNow Knowledge 20 digital experience. In the meantime, learn more by visiting us at kpmg.us/K20digital.